Started today. Call 910-399-8350 or visit FullCircleFitnessNC.com.
Join Big Talker Network is as easy as asking for it. Program your digital home assistants such as Google Home, Alexa, and Siri to stream Big Talker Network content by simple voice command. Enjoy convenient hands-free access to the program whenever you want, however you want by asking for Big Talker.
Jill, why don't you tell the class what you did this weekend?
Well, my dad and I went in search of some magical minnows and found a zillion of them in the stream from our lookout rock. Then my sister and I escaped from an evil slug king and went back to my super twig fort for safety. Then we told stories till it got dark, and the Big Dipper led us all the way home.
Where were you, Jill?
We went to the forest. It's not that far away.
Ask your parents to take you and your friends to the forest this week. It's closer than you think. Check out discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Exciting time.
Yippee-ki-yay.
I closed a sale on Ben Hawkins that nobody else could. I mean, he wasn't even going to entertain the conversation until I came at him and said, dude. And
you did. And to your credit, I mean, part of me thinks, you know, if we got people for $30 a month on commercials and $250 a month, it's just, that's your time. That's the problem with Ben is you have a limited amount of time. So the more that Ben could produce his own show via Audacity and ship it to you, the more that becomes a good deal for you and overall, because
guess what? I am in just too much pain. That's all there is to that. I should have already.
Where's the show? The show announcement.
Oh yes, I need that, don't I?
You might.
There we go. The interruption has happened.
We probably need to edit that.
No?
But it sounds good.
I didn't make it, so.
It sounds like it's far away. I barely hear.
There we go. But now you're on the air. We've been on the air. I didn't know that until somebody chimed in and said, hey, you guys are on the air.
TK's having a great day, I tell you.
Oh, it only hurts.
So, TK, since we're on the air, you might want to crank my volume up because I can barely hear you.
Okay. My volume to you.
Yes, your volume to me. And I can't return to sender unless I can hear. So, but I appreciate everyone tuning in. And thank you. See, the beautiful thing about a podcast is that, you know, you're kind of in a live format and people can interact with you in a way that makes it far more intimate. So they're hearing you and say, hey, you guys are you're on, and you got the app. You kind of have the back door in, but it's no back door. It's the front door now. You're not our back door guest. You're our front door guest, and we appreciate all the feedback. Chad Adams here, your host for the sterling next 2 hours of this broadcast, or I don't know, a podcast. I guess we should say podcast instead of broadcast, because depending on some discussions with other stations, there's no telling where this could end up. I have no idea. I'm not going to pretend to know right now. TK is doing a magnificent job. If you guys saw the setup that this guy's produced over the past year or so of simplifying, bringing the pieces together so that you get an excellent sound quality, so that, you know, the app and Yael with the development of the app and the way this is all playing out in our own little world here, it's been quite amazing. And I'm very appreciative of the work they've done. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is still happening. And, you know, unless you were under a rock, it was kind of a bizarre weekend because you had the death of the longest ruling monarch in British history, the passing of the torch to King Charles, not nearly as revered as his predecessor. And it will be interesting to see how many parts of the British crown that remain decide to go independent or become part of the Commonwealth rather than being under British monarchy, under British rule. That's a whole different era. Then we had 9/11. It's astounding to think about 9/11. My kids, 21 and 20, none of them have a memory of 9/11. None. If you're 20, if you're 24 or younger, maybe 25, stretching it. Certainly, if you're 20, let's just say 25. If you're 25 years of age or younger, you have no memory of 9/11. It is to that generation the way Pearl Harbor would have been to many folks that are in their 60s or 50s, because it would have been a memory that was shared with them, maybe people up to 70s, 80s. Yeah, about almost 80. So if you think about the L-60, to have an active memory of it, but the point is it's hard. The passage of time occurs in a way that makes it really bizarre because you can't connect. You can't, if you don't have an active memory of those planes crashing into the towers of the Pentagon or Pennsylvania and what had happened with the grounding of flights and how bizarre that before and after event was, it's really hard to recognize that your country has been attacked. Not since then, we haven't been attacked in any substantive way, thankfully. But, those people don't know what it was like to go straight into the airport and go to the terminal you're going to leave from, or to not be searched and stand in these insane lines. And by the way, it probably wouldn't have stopped those particular individuals, even though. But still remarkable that to reflect on how we were attacked, how that attack was so succinct, so tactical, and reverberated in a way that as we pull out of Afghanistan last year, disastrously, I might add, and the amount of money spent, and it has the intel gathering become better. You could argue it has because we haven't been attacked. We've certainly diminished the enemy's ability to do attacks. But then you look at the southern border and you go, wait, people had to spend a lot of time, effort, and energy to figure out a way to get into the country, to organize, to be able to get all those flight lessons and then crash the planes. We have probably 1,000 plus people of equal ability, if not better ability, that just walk across the southern border. They got into the country without even a check of any type. That probably have every document they need to organize. Even if they just imagine if 100 of them came across that really had an organized plan that came across the border spread apart by weeks over the past year and a half, and just hey, we'll meet in Tulsa and we'll start organizing, or we'll meet in 20 different cities online via Google Meets, and we'll find a way to execute the next horrible plan. It's much easier now. I mean, we can act like it's not, but it's much easier now than it was. The southern border is so porous. We've intercepted 68 folks that were on the known, or more than that, 168 that were on the known terror watch list. Those are just the ones we found. We've got people coming across the border from at least 138 different countries. It's insane the way we look at that. But having said that, was yet another occurrence that happened. And then you take it into the realm of politics. And in the realm of politics, and I was thinking about this yesterday, about how easy it is, and this is not a partisan attack. It's a truth. It's axiomatic. It's thematically, it's chapter 1 in the book of politics, Republican versus Democrat. So Hillary Clinton compared Nancy Pelosi to Queen Elizabeth. Now, on the face of that, it's absolutely absurd, but it's an effort by, there's a British monarch who stayed away from controversy, who actually decentralized the throne and led through a period, where the British Empire had built up and through whatever way you want to revise history, but they were the sun never set on the British Empire. They were one of the greatest empires in human history with respect to presence and power, for better or for worse. But then as Queen Elizabeth came to power and through time, through her monarchy, they decentralized a lot of Great Britain. A lot of these became their own countries, and she led through that. And really, it was remarkable to see it, and it's still happening to this day. And that's amazing. Whereas with Nancy Pelosi, for Hillary Clinton to compare the two, Nancy Pelosi's tried to consolidate power. She has run her party with an iron whip. I'll give her credit for this. She's a very powerful leader. She keeps her party in line. But if you look at her lifestyle, I mean, with the 56 gallons of ice cream and Paul Pelosi's DUI and the way she's conducted herself, there's no comparison. I mean, she tore up the State of the Union speech. I mean, talk about a sense of decorum lost. You may hate the president, but to tear up the State of the Union speech, no one's ever acted that way. It's just a faulty comparison. But where I was going with this, because we have a lot of guests today. We have the treasurer, Dale Folwell, with us this morning. We at TK and the team have put together a truly remarkable program. And I got to get to this. So we also have Bill Moore from All Things Brunswick at 8:30 this morning. I have Paul Valone, a champion of Second Amendment rights, and he has his Guns and Politics show. So a packed show this morning. So you'll be hearing from me at the beginning here and toward the end of the show. And moving forward, we've got I don't know where it'll all lead. I don't know. But you know what? That's the beauty of this format. So We will have those guests on. Look forward. And one of the things we will be discussing with Dale Folwell is certainly the $50+ million alleged bribe. I can't believe that story just kind of faded from the headlines. To me, it's potentially one of the greatest. I don't mean great like wonderful, but great like unbelievable corruption stories in Wilmington's history. We've never seen an allegation of a bribe of that size in constant dollars or otherwise at any point. I mean, we've seen violent acts. We've seen, certainly cover-ups like the life of R.C. Souls and what he did to young men and what happened in Brunswick and Columbus counties over the past 50 years. There's been, just rife with corruption from Cold Core in 1,000 different ways. And that corruption it's easy to have come back if you're not careful. The rise of the power of Ola Lewis. Ola Lewis, in my opinion, one of the most alarming people to rise to power in Brunswick County, someone who wielded the power of being a judge to attack people mercilessly, to really use the power of her office in a very corrupt fashion. And now I would say her base is one of the most powerful forces in Brunswick County politics. They pretty much have a consolidated power that is unbelievable. I mean, it's astounding. Now, that doesn't mean those individuals are what she was, but certainly it's the legacy is kind of shocking. Now, going back to the partisan aspect of things, I said it's easy to be a Democrat because if I remember doing a Bizarro show one time on the original Talker where I said, okay, we're going to start the show out. I'm going to act like a Democrat. I'm going to be the Bizarro Chad, the through the looking glass, the Black Mirror version of me. And it was essentially to just take the tactic of what a Democrat is. And this was really provoked because there's a number of articles out about CNN's demise and how CNN is trying to move to the middle and how the left just doesn't understand this. The left is trying to say, well, it's because they have to appeal to ignorant Trump voters. It's just this. It's that there's so many of them. There's millions of these ignorant people, so it needs to move. They never, ever consider that CNN's just been wrong and that their entire operation to become a propaganda wing of one party. That's the absurdity of this. Even with Fox News, at least they've had Bill Barr on, who's talked about, he's been very critical of Trump. They've had Trump critics on there. They've had people that want Trump in jail. They have that. CNN doesn't do stuff like that. It's just this pandering to the left. But let's talk about that because I've wandered off into the desert a little bit. It's easy to be a Democrat in this way. Whenever you want to run as a Democrat, it's easy to say, I want to solve your problems. And I want to solve your problems by not making you necessarily more accountable for the things that you do. I want to make it so that you're not accountable. The entire issue on abortion is really about a lack of accountability. They never talk about the circumstances that lead to people wanting, by and large, an abortion, that it was a personal choice they made. That if you're down on your luck, there's a huge safety net out there, but there's some people that refuse to work, and the Democrats say, look, I'll take care of you. I'll expand this. I'll expand here's the greatest Democrat speech, kind of. Fellow Americans, we need to expand Medicaid. We need to help more people. We need to give them more hope. We need to expand Social Security. Those evil Republicans want to stop it. We need to expand it. We need to provide more benefits at a younger age, and we need to expand it. We need to really increase the scope of Social Security. And that doesn't even mention Medicare. Medicare, this phenomenal program brought forth by many people over the past several decades, really needs more expansion as well. We need to provide more on Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. We need to expand those programs, provide more for more people. We need to expand K-12 education. We need to provide a free college education to everybody who wants one. It's not easy. And with respect to this illegal immigrant, it's a broken immigration system. We need to allow more people to become American citizens. We need to increase the pathway. So this entire concept of a border wall is just silly. We need to allow people to have the American dream. And all of these big wall Trump supporters, they just miss it. There's a dream, and we need to allow more people to come in. And we need to, all these people we see on the streets, what we need to do is we need to really help them out. We need to provide more for them. We need to provide more. We need to give more. The student loans, why did we stop at $10,000? The real purpose of this is to make sure that no students come out of college with debt. We ought to have a debt eradication program, the likes of which this nation has never seen. All of our students. We should.
Sorry.
See, my echo can't even believe that I'm saying these things, and it interrupted me. My own echo device did that. But you see how easy it becomes, because nothing that's happened to you is your fault. It's not possibly your fault. If you're a woman, any problem you have is because of this toxic masculinity, this patriarchal society, which doesn't take into account a lot of reality. If you're a certain person, certain skin tones or colors, well, nothing that's happened to you is your fault. It's all because of all of these historical things and the way society has treated you. If you have a sexual predilection that is not as popular as one might be, it's not, you're being discriminated against on a daily basis. If you're not pushing transgenderism, you should push it more. We should push it with kids. We should make sure kids can come out as early as 4, 5, 6, 7. We should open the door. Schools should be proud to be able to say these things. And we, by the way, those founding fathers, man, there was a bunch of racist white folks. They are, and we need to quit acting like they were special in some way, because they have created a nation of hate. They have led to this massive making America great again. They've taken that phrase, which was used by Bill Clinton first, and it wasn't demonized when he used it, but Trump stole that phrase and he made it a horrible thing for a bunch of racists. But you see how easy it is, because I never have to discuss with you as a Democrat the cost of doing these things. And if I ever get pinned on discussing the cost of dealing with any of these massive programs, whether they be local, state, or national, I just say, we'll get it from the rich. The rich have benefited way too much from legacy bad tax policy. Why should the person that lives in that beautiful house pay less than a school teacher? That's just unbelievably unfathomable that those people pay less, because they don't put into account the entire picture. They just put into account a little bit. But let's just continue, because it's easy. It's easy to bear witness to being a progressive. You don't have to be responsible. As a politician, you're giving stuff away. You're convincing the public that you're giving them things that they deserve. You've convinced many people that they deserve, not that they should have to work for these things, not that they have to, that any of the consequences of their actions matter. There are no, remember, it's the police. It's not that you made a mistake in life. It was police. They're too overbearing. The system doesn't work. So you spend decades convincing the public that things that happen to them are not their fault, that there isn't an era of responsibility, that the blue lives are the ones that they have their feet on your neck, that a lot of the problems are either racial, that they are socioeconomic, that are caused by the wealthy, or they're caused by historical racism, they're caused by sexism, homophobia, whatever you want to put in there. None of it is your fault. And there's the big disconnect. America wasn't built by people who looked around saying it wasn't my fault. It wasn't established. It was established. It was created by an actual a rejection of power over your life. It was established under the guise that you are given this opportunity, that you are sovereign in many respects, that you are the determiner of your destination in spite of the obstacles that you may have to overcome in life. And that we as a nation are great when we act in the common good, not as a government entity, but as communities, as individuals, as families. We value the importance of family. We did, a nuclear family. Because once you get rid of that, once you devalue that, and you don't know the difference between a man and a woman anymore, or at least you project that onto society, then it becomes a numbers game. And I've said this many times before over the past 2 decades. I don't know how Democrats get away with saying, we support gay marriage. First of all, many Republicans should say we want government out of marriage. Stop recognizing marriage, that's a religious institution. But if you want to have a relationship between two people, in a contract, then that's a government thing. And a marriage is a social contract. It can be a civil contract. It is in many instances. Just go to divorce court someday, you'll see that. But at what point do Democrats stop short of saying, when do they stop judging polygamy? If it's really about people that are in love, as they like to say, how do you stop at two? How do you not embrace polygamy? Because you have to throw a judgment. And I'm amazed that nobody in the media has the courage to say, well, if you believe any folks that are in love should be able to get married, why are you stopping at two? Why not thruples? Why not 3, 4? Why not multiple wives or multiple husbands? I don't know, whatever the shade is. But why do Democrats stop at 2? And if you take any of their assertions to a logical conclusion, it always falls off a cliff. It does with any expansion of a social program. There's a cost to be born. And they act like Governor Cooper never talks about the cost to be born. And oftentimes, even in your local government, when you look at your city and county and state government, whenever there's this desire to stop something or to, you find this in beach communities around here when they start addressing parking or they address limitations on construction or square footage sizes or how many cars can be parked in your driveway. There's an altruism to it at some point because this is too far. But when they start making policies, those policies affect the folks at the lowest level. And so then it really is impacting the folks at the bottom the most. When you're trying to stop hotel houses, 12, 13 bedroom homes, and those same rules affect a small home, then all of a sudden you've negated that. I mean, some of the policies they propose about parking, you look at Wrightsville Beach has been so restrictive at parking, they really want people not to visit the beach. Now, it's crushing to businesses down there, and it's very difficult. And Wrightsville is no longer the kind of destination it would be for people going to the beach, and it will become worse. And so beaches grapple with, well, how do we handle parking and still deal with our locals? Because you can't be all things to all people. Oak Island's even having some of those discussions right now about public parking. And maybe we don't let people park in the right of way, meaning you're not allowed to park at the edge of your own yard. Now, you're supposed to take care of it. You're supposed to mow it. You're supposed to weed eat it, but you're not supposed to be allowed to park in it because that would be enforceable. That's not public parking. It would be paid parking. But it's easy to be a Democrat. You just promise whatever people want. And there's no accountability for it. There's no consequences to this. But Democrats, when they're being honest behind closed doors, would admit that there are consequences to that because they know they're never going to do that. They want to bring about socialism incrementally, not all at once. It's what Obamacare was about. It was about social incrementalism, one little chip away, moving towards socialized medicine. And right now, there's a resurgence of union. Unions were set up. There was a time and a place where, factory conditions were so bad. Unions actually had a place. They solved the problems, the child labor problems, working conditions, the safety of the workplace, these kind of things. Now they're really antiquated. I mean, the teachers union doesn't have anything to do with teaching anymore. It's all about what more can I get from my teachers. Unions, I mean, when a plant votes to unionize, prices never get better. The plant doesn't necessarily become better, and try to get rid of a bad employee in a union. It's almost impossible. Any kind of union. Union protects those who are members of that union, and it gives a leverage, and it makes things it doesn't make them as competitive. And if you look at the international scene, certainly, a union, a plant that's unionized is not going to be able to compete with a foreign production of similar means, even with shipping and all of the cost of getting a product or good or service over here. So it's easy to be a Democrat. That's just the nature of the game. That's why, there's an old saying that Republicans are always fearful that people are not going to understand what it is they're trying to accomplish. And Democrats are always afraid that people are going to understand. Think about the complexity and how difficult it is to actually be a conservative in a world that thinks it deserves everything. Think about trying to convince people, no, there is no free lunch. No, there are consequences. And if you act a certain way, there are consequences for your action, whether that be you break the law, you go to jail, or whether if you live a certain lifestyle, there are consequences to that lifestyle. Hedonism, by and large, is an epic failure for the people who participate in it, the people around them over time. Doesn't mean you don't go on the Caribbean vacation you want once in a while. It just means that, in general, you live a profligate life, you're going to be broke. and the American dream isn't something that happens overnight or that you deserve. It's something that it typically takes about 15 years of really diligent hard work and sacrifice. It takes a lot. I mean, having owned several businesses, I can tell you it's not easy. But you do it because you love it. You do something you love, and a great deal of success, can come from it. Now, we're going to take a break here in a few minutes, and when we come back, we're going to talk to Bill Moore. He's the chairman of the Republican Party in Brunswick County. Brunswick County, that has benefited, has undergone the transition to become a largely red county, a Republican county. The Democrats hold very little power anywhere in the county and certainly struggle for relevancy. And then the issue becomes with Republicans, where's the accountability for when you're a one-party county or you're a one-party city, then the disagreements actually happen between those that are in power. It's not between you and another party, but we'll talk about that. We'll talk about, his perspective, how his show's going. He's produced an All Things Brunswick show that has continued to grow, has listeners. Bill's been chairman of the party. It's never easy, having been a chairman of a local party before. It's not an easy road to walk, and you have to walk that road gingerly. So we'll talk with Bill about that. We'll also discuss. We'll have Dale Folwell on later, and certainly we look forward to all of the folks that are part of the broadcast each and every day. So, having said that, we will take a break here and kick things over. TK will take it away and get us over to our news break, and then we'll be back here on the Chad Adams Show. Stay tuned.
Hello, I'm Matt Bennett with WWAY News. The Wilmington Fire Department held its annual 9/11 memorial service yesterday. The ceremony was open to the public at the Wilmington Fallen Firefighters Memorial near Empey Park. The event honored the 343 first responders who gave their lives helping others on 9/11, as well as those who have given their lives in service to the city of Wilmington. The ceremony featured Wilmington Fire Honor Guard and remarks from dignitaries. Wilmington Fire Chief Steve Mason says it's a tradition the city holds close to its heart. We're hearing from a Brunswick County man who worked as a New York firefighter when the towers collapsed. Brian Bonsignore was part of the GPS unit charged with marking the exact location of victims' remains. He volunteered for the job to bring closure to his dear friend's family, hoping he would find him among the ruins. He says the 6 months while on the job, he had tunnel vision until he'd get home. Then the images would cross his mind. Bonsignore says that's why he spends lots of time on the coast of North Carolina to be near water, a place for refuge to help him heal. And the fastest growing city in Brunswick County celebrated its founding over the weekend. The town of Leland celebrated its incorporation on Saturday at the 33rd Annual Founders Day. Weather caused the event to be postponed earlier in the month, so organizers were excited to hold the celebration, rain or shine. There were food trucks, live music, and carnival rides. Wyatt Richardson, Town of Leland Community and Enrichment Manager, says they wanted this to be a time of fellowship. And after a 2-year hiatus, the North Carolina Honey Festival was all the buzz this weekend in downtown Whiteville. According to organizers, Whiteville is one of 10 cities in North Carolina to have Bee City status, meaning the city has been recognized for environmental and agricultural practices that don't harm the bee population. Attendees were welcomed to music, food, and of course, honey products. The mission is to highlight the importance of bees in the area and encourage bee-friendly practices. For more on these stories, you can head on over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Matt Bennett. Have a great day.
Happy Monday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. Get ready for a warm and very humid day here in the Cape Fear as our temperatures get into the upper 80s inland of the coast. Middle 80s will do it along the immediate coastline with a high risk for rip currents for those east-facing beaches. And as we head into the afternoon hours, we will have to watch out for a few scattered showers and isolated thunderstorms, some of which could pack a punch with some gusty winds. As for tonight, we remain warm and humid as our temperatures fall to the low to middle 70s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by 2 Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to 2menandatruck.com. 2menandatruck.com.
This week on All Things Brunswick, Dr. Terry Stoops from the John Locke Foundation will join us to discuss the recently released test scores from the state regarding student achievement and also to discuss the Brunswick scores in relation to statewide. Join us 6 p.m. Tuesdays here on The Big Talker.
This week on Living Fit After 50, Ben Erickson from Carolina Pure joins us to discuss CBD and its benefits for those over 50. Join us this Friday, 1 p.m. right here on the Big Talker Network.
Was your home damaged by Hurricane Florence or Matthew? Repair, reconstruct, or elevate your home with help from Rebuild NC. Find out if you are eligible for assistance by calling 833-ASK-RBNC. That's 833-275-7262. Or apply now at rebuild.nc.gov/repair.
Enjoying Big Talker Network is as easy as asking for it. Program your digital home assistants such as Google Home, Alexa, and Siri to stream Big Talker Network content by simple voice command. Enjoy convenient hands-free access to the program whenever you want, however you want by asking for Big Talker.
EK's got some interesting taste for music, which I've always appreciated. Hey, he's a musician. I wish I could do a tenth. I love piano, guitar. Those are my two go-tos, but nothing like he can do. Just amazed. I mean, musicians always amaze me. I was, over the past weekend, studying a number of them, and I'm going to learn how to play that flamenco guitar someday. I don't know how, but I'm going to get there. Now, yeah, as we look, I'm looking at a number of stories that I went through, that we've got to be concerned about moving forward. And then, by the way, Bill Moore, I believe Bill Moore may be traveling and he's not into his normal spot this morning. So, Bill, I know you're out there and you're probably like, why is Chad saying I'm going to be on? I told him I was traveling. Don't know. That's the nature of this thing. And I'm going to have to avoid some sunlight because the curvature of the earth and the tilting of the axis is starting to, at a certain point, there's one tiny spot where sun can come in like a laser and just roast me while I'm doing it from this particular angle in this particular room. Now, do want to get to a little bit of the CNN stuff. And I'm not going to belabor it, but it's an interesting story. I could get through it. In fact, it's almost worthy of being read as the CNN, people have noticed that really over the past, I'd say, number of weeks, the number of hosts have left. Brian Stelter's gone. They've got a new CEO. Things are going, Don Lemon and others should be in trouble. On Thursday, September 1st, in a primetime speech at Independence Hall, Joe Biden described Trumpism as a clear and present danger. By the way, I'm reading you from Slate magazine. Justin Peters wrote this article. And it's very typical of how the left views itself. It never looks in a mirror. It looks through an Overton window in which the world only looks a certain way, the way they see it. They never consider that there's a variety of ways to look at something. And so this is a really good example of that. On Thursday, September 1st, in a primetime speech at Independence Hall, Joe Biden described Trumpism as a clear and present danger. During CNN's analysis of the speech, White House correspondent John Harwood noted that the president's core point was true. Quote, that's something that's not easy for us as journalists to say, said Harwood. We're brought up to believe that there's two different political parties with different points of view, and we don't take sides in honest disagreements between them, but that's not what we're talking about. These are not honest disagreements. The Republican Party is led by a dishonest demagogue. Okay, that is as political a speech as an alleged journalist could have. That is undermining everything, because in so doing, in saying something like that, it completely destroys the credibility of that particular journalist. He didn't say that that's one viewpoint, and he doesn't go back and address any of the policy initiatives that there's a lot of people that voted for Trump that don't like him as a person, but love the policies. They really appreciate him standing up to the UN. He actually predicted in 2018 that Germany would be beholden to Russia for energy needs. Most of Europe is right now. It's going to be a cold, dark winter in Europe because they don't have enough supplies to keep themselves warm. The Russians are doing quite well on that front. I mean, for Trump to stand up to NATO and say you're going to pay your fair share, you should. Saying there's a problem with the southern border is an absolutely solid policy. To have a methodical withdrawal of Afghanistan was actually Trump doctrine. You're going to pull out slowly. You're going to have you probably keep Bagram Air Force Base there. You're going to keep intelligence going. You're going to hold the Taliban at least in some kind of check and balance. No, that's not what we did. We didn't. We held Iran to account. Iran was largely irrelevant during the 4 years of Trump. So too North Korea. So too the Russians, by the way, for all the allegations about Russian disinformation. Dan Rather, not exactly a font of unbiased reporting, is talking about, imagine how bad it would be with Trump in office with Ukraine. And it's highly probable that there would have been no invasion, because the Russians were very concerned about the seriousness that Trump would have encountered, would have responded in Ukraine. They were much more concerned about Trump than they were Biden. It's very evident. The Russians think Biden's and Democrats are largely irrelevant. They could care less. The fact that we're throwing $13 billion into the Ukraine is a bit of a shock. But at the same time, we don't even defend our own border as well as we're trying to defend Ukraine's. And the other shocking thing there is, remember, we didn't get into Vietnam all at once. It was assistance, then it was advisors, and then it was actual bodies on the ground. Now, the Ukrainians are having a great offensive right now, pushing the Russians back in our parts of their country. But yeah, they're holding, and then the Donbass region out in the east, it's not going as well for the Ukrainians. It's kind of a stalemate, but this could drag on for years, if not decades. How much are we willing to pay as Americans? Something we may not have had to deal with. But anyway, back to the article. The next day, his Twitter account, Harwood, announced he was leaving CNN, effective immediately. It was not hard to draw direct connection to his frank on-air characterizations of Trump's Republican Party, regardless of whether Harwood's analysis itself was what earned him the heave-ho or whether he felt to speak so bluntly because he already knew he was being shown the door. They're clearly correlated. Calling Donald Trump a dishonest demagogue shouldn't be the sort of thing that might get a journalist in trouble. Notice they don't do that to Hillary. Notice they don't say that about Joe Biden. Joe Biden literally plagiarized his way through the 80s. He's admitted he's done all sorts of things. He's lied multiple times. He's got a son that may be involved in all sorts of espionage. But to act like somehow only one politician is a demagogue, it depends on what your definition of the word is. Trump, the statement is roughly as disputable as saying that fire is hot or water is wet. By the way, water is not wet. What it does to other things is make them wet. Trump lost the 2020 presidential election, pretended that he didn't. Wait a minute. Hillary Clinton lost the 2016 election and pretended she didn't. Stacey Abrams lost the 2018 gubernatorial race and pretended she didn't. But it's only bad if people on the right do it. And I'm not saying Trump should have done that. I'm just saying to act like only one group has done that. And remember Gore, the 2000 presidential election? So why does the new management at CNN seem so intent on pretending that these things aren't true? The answer, of course, is because, listen to this. This is the reason the left draws about what CNN's actually doing. The answer, of course, is because millions of Americans still support Trump and believe his obvious lies. And because CNN would like very much, just like they believe Hillary Clinton's lies. Yeah, she had classified emails on the server. She bleached it, smashed them with hammers. She did that. Those are true. Some of those emails, by the way, ended up because of her assistant Huma Abedin's connection to Anthony Weiner. He disgraced New York congressman. Some of those emails were on Anthony Weiner's laptop. That's not speculation. That's not wild right-wing assertion. That's true. But let's go back to Trump's the bad guy. Americans still support Trump and believe his obvious lies, and because CNN would very much like some of those people to help boost their ratings. After the February departure of longtime network CEO Jeff Zucker and the April merger of CNN's parent company with Discovery, the network has been under renewed mandate to build a stronger, more sustainable business. But in its haste to renew its appeal with the sorts of old cranks who will be last in line to cancel their cable subscriptions, the network risks damaging its credibility as a news organization that can be counted on to tell the truth. Now, first of all, CNN has not been a news organization. Not in the past 5 years, not in the past 10 years. It really hasn't. It abandoned news to be propaganda for one side. So this is the part that leftists mean. When you read that, so that's from Slate Magazine. Politico has some things along this line. The Atlantic has said similar things. The New York Times has alluded to these kind of things. The left never looks in the mirror and says, it is a little propaganda. We should question our own. If you want to be really good in the way you deal with life, it means you have the ability to see multiple sides and points of view. When I used to interview, and as we do interviews, one thing I loved about interviews was allowing people to speak, allowing Democrats or Republicans or Libertarians, whoever was the subject of the interview, you allow them to speak. You don't get belligerent with them. You don't need to. You can ask them very tough and pointed questions, but there's no need to be very personal about it. CNN made it very personal. Even Rachel Maddow's, the Rachel Maddow's rise to prominence is based on this very. It's the propaganda of appeal to authority. She's highly educated. She's a Rhodes Scholar, and so therefore, what comes out of her mouth must be true. And it drew people in, and she helped launch several careers at CNN, all based on propaganda. I mean, a lot of the MSNBC, CNN crowd, it's just drivel. It's just absolute propaganda. And so if you want to go back and you want to be successful, they're reading the tea leaves wrong and saying that CNN is attempting to placate Trump supporters is missing the point. They can't placate you. This is the thing about Trump supporters. You can't placate them by being fake. You can't placate them with propaganda. You don't placate a group that they know they're being played. You got to realize, not just Trump supporters, even the people that don't like Trump that support him, what they don't like is a dishonest news media. They know. I mean, you can sit there and say Trump's lied and Trump's Democrat. Trump speaks in sweeping hyperbole. I mean, I'll give you an example. It's over the weekend through 9/11, there were a number of people that tried to put forth the story about real estate developer in September of 2001 that assembled hundreds of employees and tried to help with the rubble, help with cleaning up the aftermath of 9/11. And it was Donald Trump as an individual citizen, as a real estate developer. And there were fact checkers and there were media types and Twitter and that were preventing that from being put out there. And essentially the meme went something like this, that we were attacked on 9/11. And after that, on that day, real estate developer Donald Trump started assembling people to help with cleaning it up, getting bodies, all of that. And all of it was 100% true. He's on tape. In fact, he was interviewed at that time because the media didn't hate him. Remember, he was loved before he was hated. And they interviewed him about that. And he talked about the devastation. It was very touching and personal to him. He's someone who helped alter the New York skyline. And it very much mattered to him. And now they have to go back and revise and say, well, it didn't really happen like that. He didn't put people out there helping until September the 13th, never accounting for the fact that it takes a little time for logistics to kick in and get employees that are doing other things on other projects. Devoted and organized. And how can they not get in the way of the people, the government people that are trying to sort through stuff? Hey, we're ready. We're willing to help. What can we do? D.H. Griffin was one of those. D.H. Griffin, the trash and magnet. He sent people. In the end, when they were trying to clean up the bottom of the towers and get that excavation done, you had to deal with the mob. You had to deal with unions. It was an organizational nightmare. And D.H. Griffin, he of North Carolina fame, was one of the only people that could get up there and organize it in such a way that it got done. You don't hear those stories, though. You don't hear those stories. They're there. You have to dig through them. You can find them. But I happen to know people that worked with DH that were part of that 9/11 cleanup, that were able to get going and get away from the graft and corruption that was part of that cleanup. Sad, but true. So CNN's demise is, again, remember earlier in the show, I discussed consequences, how easy it is to be a Democrat because you don't have, the only people that have consequences are Republicans because we can hold hearings and we can impeach them, even though it may be fraudulent impeachment. We can just drag them in and then say that they're resisting our subpoenas because they're criminals. Not because they're innocent, because, Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell and the rest of these short bus people think that if you disagree with them, you're a criminal. If you disagree with the Democrats, you're a criminal in some way. They never put the pieces together that they don't believe in accountability for anyone except Republicans. They never believe in accountability for what's happening in California. They don't believe in accountability for what's happening with waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid. I think expansion of Medicaid, and again, I'm going off on a tangent. Here in North Carolina, our governor wants to expand Medicaid, and the Republicans are somewhat reluctantly starting to have that discussion. But if you really wanted to fix Medicaid, just get rid of the $3 billion in waste, fraud, and abuse, which by most estimates is where we are in North Carolina. If you fixed that, if you told me before I expand it, I want to fix it, that's a much easier sell. But the Democrat sell is forget about fixing it. Let's just expand it. And that's the distinction with a difference about where we are. Because again, it's very easy to say there's no accountability, and it's great because you as a politician, if I want to kick the can down the field and not be accountable, if I was the Democrats of the 80s and 90s and I wanted to kick the can, which they did, anytime they did it, they knew there would come a point where Social Security would become insolvent. They knew there would come a point where Medicaid and Medicare would run into fiscal problems and cliffs, but they just kicked the can. Now, what they didn't count on was that they would still be in office 30 years later. They never dreamed that they'd be able to stay in office for decades. They never dreamed it would be they're creating their own monarchy. I mean, Nancy Pelosi's 81 years old. 81. It's astounding. You add her and Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden's ages together, you're at the founding of the U.S. Those ages go back to the founding of the U.S. Nancy Pelosi's been alive for about a third of our nation's history. That's amazing. And she's been in power for like a sixth or a fifth of our nation's history. 1/5 of our nation's history, Pelosi and Biden have been in power. If you add them together, it's about a third of the nation's history. Those two, they represent 80 plus years of being in office. Did they really make things better? Did they really improve? Did they improve the fiscal outlook of the country? Did they improve? They just spent more money, but without a lot of accountability. But I digress. CNN's demise is of its own making. They're not trying to placate Trump supporters. The new CEO is trying to find a way to have honest discussions about the issues confronting. Now, if he does that, oh, wait, toxic masculinity, it's a guy. Why'd they let a guy head CNN? That's obscene, right? But if he can have honest discussions about the issues that are confronting us today, there's a chance CNN could recover. Now, it's a tailspin. I think they waited way too long. I think they're going to be marginalized. I think MSNBC is marginalized. I think they have a lack of support. But the question is, will their people on the left, will the progressives, and I'm not talking about the extremes are going to drop them and call them names and stuff like that, but will the mainstream left allow CNN the opportunity to present more balanced news? And here's what happened. Here's what's happening. Here's what the implications are for both sides. Here's where the different questions are that need to be answered. Will the progressives allow that to take place? I don't know. But the criticism that it's all about placating dumb Trump supporters is insane. But that's what they want to say. That's what they've been saying. It's what they're going to continue to try to say as we move forward in this. And it's one of my favorite cartoons of all times was Calvin and Hobbes. And it's just like, Calvin's making the excuse for not doing his homework because he didn't pay his gravity bill and it all floated off. It's just that kind of moonback crazy that we see today in politics and everything else. And, this weekend, I was kind of reflecting on that things aren't that bad. I know that sounds coy, but, in the grand scheme of things, we live in a time where we have access to more goods and services than we've ever really had, even coming out of the pandemic. I think we took a step back in the pandemic. I think certainly a lot of economic freedoms were taken from us. And I'll make one point on that if you look at the past couple of years, so when people scream, when the Antifa crowd screams that the right are full of fascists, or that any progressive tries to tell you that Donald Trump was a fascist, or anybody on the right uses the word fascist, the first thing you ought to ask them is, which side really pushed the lockdowns? Which side pushed for the shutdowns of all economic activity in the country or other countries? Which side really took your freedoms away? Which side, still to this day in some parts of our country, enforced mask mandates, destroyed our kids' ability to learn to speak and read, destroyed our kids' ability to go to school, destroyed our ability to produce things, and tried to subsidize our existence with government? Now, certainly Republicans, many of them were complacent. They were afraid. Rather than stand up to the tyranny of the left, they kind of took a knee and went down that path. But if you look at the groups of people that were pushing back, where were the groups that were pushing back? They were all on the right. The left, none of the groups on the left, because they love this. The people on the left, not all the people, but those in power realized, and we've given them a scary ability. Governor Cooper realized, and the people around Governor Cooper realized, if I can make people feel unsafe, I can have more power. The more unsafe people feel, the more power the left can grab, and they will wield it, and they will hold it, and they will use it against you. And so under the auspices, we learned this from the 70s through the 90s. What the left learned was socialism wasn't selling. It wasn't popular. Nobody liked it. And then they used climate change as a way to get to socialism, saying, wait a minute, under the auspices of climate change, I can achieve all of what I need for socialism. I can assume power over the means of energy production. I can assume power over people's ability to use energy. I can kind of nationalize things if I have to. I can impose all sorts of, and instead of doing it directly, like taking your company from you and running it, which a true socialist would do, they just create enough regulations that the government is controlling your company without doing it directly. So they learned climate change is nothing but, Greta Thunberg notwithstanding, she's a useful pawn, but it is about the ultimate implementation of socialism. And then you take it a step forward, the pandemic, another great opportunity, as they say in Rules for Radicals, never let a crisis go to waste. It was fantastic for the left to say, under the auspices of fear, I can assume more power. And they did. And they continued to use it. And they continued. Governor Cooper's state of emergency just ended on August the 15th. In Canada, you still need proof of it. You need papers. You need papers. Where's that famous line from? You need papers. That's the scariest part of this is, and how do you know that that's what's taking place? Because you can look at the preponderance of socialists out there that are pushing this fascist narrative, that are out there calling every Republican they can, from Ted Cruz to Rand Paul to Trump to anybody that ever supported anything on the right. They call them fascists. They call them names, and it's a projection. The greatest way to do it is whatever you're doing wrong, say the other guy's doing that. I looked the other day. I was in particular interest. I find the Mehmet Oz John Fetterman race fascinating. Fetterman, who's lived with his parents all of his life, who has since had a stroke, and that's a horrible thing to have happen, but he can't speak in public. It's going to be very difficult if he wins to be a senator that has a say-so. It's an unfortunate medical reality. But beyond that, he just wasn't all that profound with respect. He's proof of what I talk about being a Democrat. He supports unions. He supports more minimum wage laws. He supports more giveaways to the poor. He supports expanding Medicaid, Social Security. He supports everything that I went through earlier. That basically is John Fetterman's campaign. But I took a step forward. He said, use any two words to describe Mehmet Oz. And he was like, freeloader and Jersey resident. And he was, any two words. And I said, how about this? I don't know. Successful surgeon, generous donator to, he's given so much money away. He created his own television show. He's done a lot of things. Now, whether you agree with him politically or not, the point is you can't argue with Oz Mehmet's success in life. He has been an amazing, relative to Fetterman, Oz has created jobs, not government jobs. He's created actual jobs in the free market. He has used his skills and ability to do many things to help lots of people. Fetterman hasn't done that. Fetterman's done none of that. He's lived with mom and dad and lived off he was an obscure mayor that becomes a lieutenant governor. It wasn't that he accomplished a whole lot. It's that he's just a Democrat in Pennsylvania. So when I looked through this, it was just the entire campaign is based on what can I give away. I'm astounded that Pennsylvania, that race is as close. And the only reason it's close is because they have tried to tar and feather Oz and avoid the issues as much as they can. They don't want to talk issues. They don't want to debate issues. They just want to say Mehmet Oz lives in Jersey, and which he doesn't. And they want to go after, just ignore Fetterman's problems. And you can't do that unless you have a very complacent media. You can't do that unless you have a very complacent social media as well. Fetterman can say whatever he wants. No one's going to hold him accountable. They feel sorry for him. They pity him. Now, contrast that with Georgia. The same thing kind of in Georgia, except they don't pity Warnock. It's two black men running against each other and Herschel Walker. So what you can do is you can call Republicans names like Uncle Tom. You can call Republicans things like, a black Klan member. You can and certainly attack him because he had 3 kids out of wedlock. And Warnock doesn't have to deal with his voting record. He doesn't have to deal with that. Warnock has, again, the Atlanta Constitution and many other media throughout Georgia, very friendly to Warnock. And And that's really trying to stifle using the power of media to control a political race. In North Carolina, you kind of see it a little bit. Ted Budd's going to have trouble breaking out of the I'm a gun store owner. He's going to have trouble getting beyond that. And he's going to need much more than gun advocacy to win this race against Sherry Beasley, a former Supreme Court justice. He's going to have many more hills to climb than she is. She's got a very Capital Broadcasting, WRAL, probably the single most powerful news group in the state of North Carolina. They're very much on Team Beasley. You look at the News and Observer and the Charlotte Observer, the two most powerful newspapers that are one and the same, owned by the same company, very much engaged in helping Sherry Beasley. So, Ted Budd's going to have to find a way to break through that. He's going to have to find a way to create messaging. I think Sherry Beasley's ads are very effective, at least at this point. But we're now into September where you're going to see both teams really going at it. I don't know. This should be an easy one for Republicans to walk away from in this economy. If it becomes about kitchen table economics, if it becomes about the decisions that families have to make to pay bills, energy costs are up 32% across the nation in just over a year. That's astounding. That's an impact on every company's ability to produce. That's an impact that actually contributes to inflation, because if the cost and means of production is more expensive, then the price of goods and services produced are more expensive. That means you have to pay more. And as you head into the Christmas season, that's going to become more self-evident. Also, the stock markets, people's 401ks, their IRAs, off about 20%, anywhere between 15 and 20% on average. Just this year, one of the worst years ever. And yet, if you read Biden's and the left's Twitter feed, which I do that for you so you don't have to experience the pain. It's just propaganda. It's the greatest economy, greatest economic recovery, greatest job creation ever. But we're going to have a fantastic guest coming up next. Our good friend Dale Folwell, he the treasurer for the state of North Carolina. As someone I've known for decades, Dale's probably the epitome of what public service should be. He defines it. He lives it. He works tirelessly for you, the taxpayers. We're going to talk to him. We're going to bring up this hospital deal down in New Hanover County, this $50+ million alleged bribe, what's happening to the hospital that Dale predicted, by the way, would happen. Much more to go here on the Chad Adams Show. We'll be right back after this. Hour 2 getting ready to be underway.
You're tuned in to the Big Talker Network, Wilmington, North Carolina's premier internet station for news and talk radio programming. Find us online at bigtalker.live.
This week on All Things Brunswick, Dr. Terry Stoops from the John Locke Foundation will join us to discuss the recently released test scores from the state regarding student achievement, and also to discuss the Brunswick scores in relation to statewide. Join us 6 p.m. Tuesdays here on the Big Talker.
Enjoying Big Talker Network is as easy as asking for it. Program your digital home assistants such as Google Home, Alexa, and Siri to stream Big Talker Network content by simple voice command. Enjoy convenient hands-free access to program whenever you want, however you want, by asking for Big Talker.
The way I describe it for people is my dad shot himself and the bullet hit everyone in his life. It was a week before my 30th birthday, and I had this impulse to call him, but I didn't, because I thought I could call him later that week.
63 Americans a day die by gun suicide. With safe gun storage, we can give our loved ones a second chance at life. Learn more at endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by Brady and the Ad Council.
Hello, I'm Matt Bennett with WWAY News. The Wilmington Fire Department held its annual 9/11 memorial service yesterday. The ceremony was open to the public at the Wilmington Fallen Firefighters Memorial near MP Park. The event honored the 343 first responders who gave their lives helping others on 9/11, as well as those who have given their lives in service to the city of Wilmington. The ceremony featured Wilmington Fire Honor Guard and remarks from dignitaries. Wilmington Fire Chief Steve Mason says it's a tradition the city holds close to its heart. We're hearing from a Brunswick County man who worked as a New York firefighter when the towers collapsed. Brian Bonsignore was part of the GPS unit charged with marking the exact location of victims' remains. He volunteered for the job to bring closure to his dear friend's family, hoping he would find him among the ruins. He says the 6 months while on the job, he had tunnel vision until he'd get home. Then the images would cross his mind. Bonsignore says that's why he spends lots of time on the coast of North Carolina, to be near water, a place for refuge to help him heal. And the fastest growing city in Brunswick County celebrated its founding over the weekend. The town of Leland celebrated its incorporation on Saturday at the 33rd Annual Founders Day. Weather caused the event to be postponed earlier in the month, so organizers were excited to hold the celebration, rain or shine. There were food trucks, live music, and carnival rides. Wyatt Richardson, Town of Leland Community and Enrichment Manager, says they wanted this to be a time of fellowship. And after a 2-year hiatus, the North Carolina Honey Festival was all the buzz this weekend in downtown Whiteville. According to organizers, Whiteville is one of 10 cities in North Carolina to have Bee City status, meaning the city has been recognized for environmental and agricultural practices that don't harm the bee population. Attendees were welcomed to music, food, and of course, honey products. The mission is to highlight the importance of bees in the area and encourage bee-friendly practices. For more on these stories, you can head on over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Matt Bennett. Have a great day.
Happy Monday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. Get ready for a warm and very humid day here in the Cape Fear as our temperatures get into the upper 80s inland of the coast. Middle 80s will do it along the immediate coastline with a high risk for rip currents for those east-facing beaches. And as we head into the afternoon hours, we will have to watch out for a few scattered showers and isolated thunderstorms, some of which could pack a punch with some gusty winds. As for tonight, we remain warm and humid as our temperatures fall to the low to middle 70s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
Marine Service Pro and the Tackle Box Seafood, located at 8210 River Road, Southport, is open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, with the Tackle Box open Monday through Saturday, 7 to 6. Marine Service Pro is a full Suzuki and Tohatsu dealership. They deal in pre-owned boats, full service and repair, with certified technicians in all engines, and fiberglass specialists. The Tackle Box offers fresh, local seafood, live bait, a tackle shop, and fish packing and shipping. They also offer a full-service U-Haul dealership. Spend time with Leon or Jenny for one-stop shopping at Marine Service Pro and the Tackle Box Seafood, 8210 River Road, Southport.
This week on Living Fit After 50, Ben Erickson from Carolina Pure joins us to discuss CBD and its benefits for those over 50. Join us this Friday, 1 p.m. right here on the Big Talker Network.
Second hour underway here. Chad Adams, your host, being joined by one of my favorite people anywhere in the political realm, and one of the least political people I've ever known in my life. Knew him as a representative, known him as treasurer, also knew when he was working with fixing our unemployment system in North Carolina. Dale Folwell, someone who understands the notion of public service like very few other people do. Dale, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Just great to be back with you, Chad. Thank you for having me on the show. I was driving through Alamance County this morning, and I'm just reminded of Howard Coble, another great public servant who some of your listeners may know, one of the only people I've ever heard of who refused his Social Security check while he was a member of Congress because he didn't think his government should be paying him twice, and that's a true definition of a public servant.
Coble was one of a kind. I remember him fondly, remember him well. I got to be close to him for a number of years. That's fascinating. Up in Alamance County as you drive through there between Greensboro and Chapel Hill. So safe travels wherever you're going. I know you're out on the road. For those of you who don't know Dale is as one of the most organized users of time I've ever known. I've rarely been around you when you didn't have somewhere between 8 to 14 meetings a day. So how many do you, just for curiosity, how many meetings are you trying to make today? I know you've probably already been at 1 or 2.
I've already been at 2 this morning, and today is kind of a light day. I'm getting back to the office. We'll have about 6 or 7 meetings and or interviews, but very grateful to be joining the folks, and especially in Southeast North Carolina, and talk about some of the issues we're dealing with at the Treasurer's Office related to New Hanover and Brunswick County.
Well, certainly, as people hear you say Alamance County, you've got about another 85 miles to go to get to the office. So that's just side, not that important, but I just know what a road warrior you are. Now, I've got to ask you, you were highly critical of New Hanover County basically giving the hospital over to Novant. Novant has a facility in Brunswick County. It was looking to expand and become, a larger member of the hospital cartel in North Carolina. And it acquired New Hanover Regional Hospital and got, I don't know, a couple $100 million. It was in the bank from the county. Since then, the former CEO has said, hey, this thing was in trouble before Novant took over. It's really in trouble now. We've had a number of staff changes. A lot of people have left. It's having trouble keeping up. There are people that are going to the emergency room that are waiting days sometimes to get treated. It's a bit of a mess, as they say. And I'll get to the allegation with Julia Bozeman later, but what's your assessment of how this transition's going for the citizens of Brunswick, New Hanover, Pender counties, that's their regional medical center?
I'm saddened and I'm disappointed. This was very predictable. I was, as you just mentioned, part of what we call SOH, which is Save Our Hospital. The citizens of New Hanover County had one of the few independent, high quality, high access, reasonably priced, profitable community hospitals in the United States. And now they don't before this transaction's had its second birthday. The reason I'm more saddened than usual is that I just spent 2 days last week in Asheville, North Carolina, with the disastrous takeover of Mission Health by HCA. And I told the folks in Wilmington, after this other deal had gone through, about what the people in New Hanover could expect within 2 years, and it's happening faster than I thought. What needs to happen is that Novant needs to sell New Hanover Regional back to the community at half of what they paid for it, because that's how many hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars it's going to take to give you folks that independent, high quality, high access hospital again. And I just want to close on this one. We just had our public forum in Western North Carolina on the de-weaponization of credit scores, people's credit scores being weaponized because of the consumption of health care. We had a person, Chad, who testified that, and I think most of your listeners are familiar with something called a DNR, which is do not resuscitate. She just went to the lawyer and had her DNR amended to include, whatever you do, do not take me to Mission Health. That's how bad it is.
Well, certainly, even with my mother, my experience with my mother, and New Hanover Regional saved my wife's life, and my mother unfortunately had a very terrible experience at Novant and passed. And I was very disappointed in the entirety of the process. The entirety of the process from the time she got to the hospital till she passed, which took about a month. It was a horrific process. I never felt like I was well informed. I never was dealing with the same doctor, the same staff. I was getting different answers at every turn. It was horrifically confusing, and ultimately did not do my mother any service or any favors. I was extremely disappointed. And since that time, I've been inundated with folks sharing similar experiences. My daughter at this time is about. Well, she's a volunteer there. My daughter's a junior in college, and she's a volunteer there. And the stories that she's been sharing are heartbreaking.
It's sad. It didn't have to be this way. And we always have to be clear when we have these conversations, Chad. This isn't about the people who saved Catherine's life or actually saved my life in March of 20 when I was one of the early contractors of COVID. These people are doing unbelievable Herculean work. We're not talking about the actual people who do health care. We're talking about these multi-billion-dollar corporations who disguise themselves as nonprofits, who don't pay your community's sales tax, property taxes. They don't pay the state any state income taxes, and they're million-dollar executives who are laughing all the way to the bank.
It was, and I concur completely. And in my mother's case, it was it was a function of administration that made things so difficult, navigating the administrative labyrinth. I feel bad for folks who may not have had to deal with medical staff before, not staff, but with the administration getting through that. They were always more concerned. I felt like it was very much a one way. They wanted to make sure they could get paid. They wanted to make sure all the paperwork was in place. But when it came to giving answers and providing answers, it was very bad. It was very poor. It was terrible. I mean, moving my mother in the middle of the night without consulting the family, not letting us know what was going on. That's a function of administration and standard operating procedures that the administration set up. So I don't think the transition, in spite of the fact that they had a big promotion about this new Novant presentation to the world and how it was going to be great for the community, it hasn't gone that way. And I think it's a reflection of the leadership of Novant. Again, there are great doctors, there are great nurses, there are great teams there. There are people that genuinely want to help people, but the administration of that hospital is absolutely not in line with providing the service that the people need. I completely concur. And that'll take us to the next story, which I have to ask. There's an allegation by WHQR in Wilmington, public radio, that Frances Weller's sister, Miss Stargell, said that essentially her group was approached by the chairman of the New Hanover County Commission, Julia Bozeman, and offered somewhat of a public bribe to downplay some information. Can you kind of go through this? Because this should be a story that ends up in handcuffs for people. The assertion of using $50 million of taxpayer funds when not just one, but two government officials are allegedly aware of this. What happened here? I mean, how could this even be remotely possible?
Well, let's start with the fact that we hope it's not true. But
yes,
if it is, it's a complete tragedy. And not only is the potential offering of a bribe a tragedy, but also just think about the courage of these two people who have come forward in that community. Two people, not just one.
Yeah,
who have confirmed this. And the timing of this is so ironic. I mean, it happened even before this hospital was sold to the Novant and the cartel. Even before that happened, and I am deeply concerned about not only the Dogwood Trust out in the western part of the state with the sale of Mission Health to HCA, as I am, the trust that was set up in New Hanover and Wilmington, North Carolina. Let me just say that we're going to talk about this issue, but in the Western North Carolina instance, they're going on their 4th birthday of HCA taking over Mission Health. There is not one sign of HCA, not on an ambulance, not on a building, not on a parking deck. Everything, they never even put their signage on it because I think they're so embarrassed about what's happened. And now we come back to the New Hanover story, and I continue to deal with this. Don't know why the management at New Hanover County just feels like everything needs to be an investment banking deal. I mean, New Hanover County is one of the most prosperous counties in not just in North Carolina, but in the United States. They can borrow money at some of the lowest rates in the United States, and for everything to be so complicated when you got all those things going for you is just something I don't understand.
Where do you think this ends up? I mean, that allegation is pretty. It's a $50 million allegation. I mean, and like you said, people have come forward. Who is responsible for investigating this?
The local district attorney. And then if the local district attorney doesn't think that he or she can handle that, so he in this case, they have this thing set up at the AOC called the Conference of District Attorneys, where people take prosecutorial situations that are too hot to handle on a local basis. And given the level of detail that was given in these news reports, I'm fully suspect that Mike Easley Jr., the federal prosecutor, will be looking at this also.
Because again, and the chairman of the county commission down there, without I don't even really have to render any judgment here. She has had a bit of a train wreck in her when she was a senator. Many people were astounded she was a senator. She didn't just allege drug use. She testified to a lot of drug use. She leaves the Senate. It's an absolute nightmare in her professional life as a lawyer. She becomes a county commissioner in New Hanover, elevates to the point of becoming chairman of the county commission. More train wreck ensues. There's all sorts of allegations. There was a bench warrant for her arrest when she was in Italy, having a good time over there, and then supposed to go straight to jail, but somehow gets out of that for misuse of client funds. She claims it's all politically motivated. While in Italy, or coming in the process of coming back, there's a story that runs about her abandoning her wife and kid, one of her kids over there, and making it difficult for them to get home. Again, I'm not making this up. This is not me proselytizing or politicizing anything. And then there's an allegation that she used her power as a chairman of the county commission in front of not one but two witnesses now for a $50 million public bribe to make something to avoid discussions about the hospital and make a program look good. It's a bizarre, almost unfathomable, but then it's gone away from the news. I mean, it's not even on the front pages of many news stories. This would lead in most every market in the state. This would be a lead story that wouldn't go away.
Well, you're exactly right, and it needs to be gotten to the bottom of one way or another. And the people that have made these accusations, I don't know them personally, but I think they have a outstanding track record and reputation in that community. But
right.
The fact is, and the other part of this is, if my facts are correct, and I apologize if they're not, when this story first broke, the New Hanover County management said they had no knowledge of any of this.
Correct. Chris Coutray, the county manager, said that. Yeah.
Yeah. 3 hours later, I think they had to come back and say, we've known about this for 2 years.
Unbelievable. They were aware of that and I know Chris Coutray personally. I've known him for many years. He's been the county manager for about a decade now, maybe more. But it's really shocking that they had to do an about face. It has been, actually, we did know about it. So this does require not just an investigation, but if it was even said, this is a corruption on a grand scale for New Hanover County. It's a shameful period of time. It's shameful that it occurred, and it's just there should be resignations at hand, if not jail time for some folks. Now, Dale, you've been on the front lines of being critical of the hospitals across the state. They've become cartel-like in the way they function. People are like, Chad, don't you believe in free markets? I absolutely do. I think that hospitals and groups of people that want to provide medical services should be allowed to open. I think the certificate of need process should be abandoned. It's a socialist process which allows government to bless certain medical endeavors while preventing others from providing services for the citizens of this great state. And it has led to the rise of hospitals, and the cost of providing the cost of just being a doctor has led to all these hospitals buying up medical practices. So they essentially own, almost like kingdoms. It's almost medieval, where these hospital associations have divided up the state geographically, and they own the given territory, regardless of whether it's Novant, regardless of whether it's any other medical community out there. These hospital associations that have about, $30 billion in offshore accounts own North Carolina from a medical providing standpoint, except for a few people that are trying to compete. They're not really competing. They're just providing services that are small enough to not be gobbled up, threatened, or ended by these cartels.
Well, as I've said to you in the past, this is like an onion. The more we peel it, the more we cry.
Yes.
The hospital association and this cartel, they gave the middle finger to the previous and the current president of the United States when they tried to enforce executive orders to tell people what things cost. It's no more complicated than that. Just tell people what things cost. Have your charity care equal the amount of tax benefit that you get, and stop weaponizing people's credit scores because of something they would rather not have consumed, which is health care. So
Right.
This is like an onion. The more we peel it, the more we cry. And this is the government picking winners and losers. They're picking losers through something called a certificate of need. And the first 3 letters of those 3 words for your listeners is pronounced con. It is a con on the people of the state. So they control the access to this product, the quantity of this product, the quality of this product, the price of this product, and they decide whether they want to break your kneecaps and weaponize your credit score if you don't pay for this product. And I was in Wilmington about 8 weeks ago speaking to the FBI Agents Association down at Riceville Beach, and I'll tell you, when you use the word cartel in front of 200 FBI agents, you better know what you're talking about. And after I got through explaining it, one of them came up to me and said, "Yep, that's how cartels operate."
Exactly. They function the same. They are set up in much the same fashion for anyone who studies cartels. You've done a great job of articulating that on numerous occasions. And moving forward, I know, the state's one of the largest, enforces the wrong word. Now you're not a provider, but you have the largest group of individuals that consume healthcare in the state between the retirees and actual state employees. That's a massive. It's like almost 1 in 10 people in the state in some way are connected to the state healthcare plan, and that hasn't exactly gone swimmingly. And those patients are not being, you've noticed this, and even the lack of clarity that it led to you showing this massive document that you carried around. It's worn out. It's got all these retractions on. It's got all this black print when you ask for transparency in billing and what you're paying the bills, but you're not being told what you're paying for.
Well, that's exactly right. And, we're the largest purchaser of healthcare in North Carolina. You start talking about the number of those that teach, protect, and serve that we have the responsibility for. I want to put this in context for your listeners. If you add up all the people in the United States who work for Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, Jamie Dimon's JP Morgan, or Jeff Bezos' Amazon, if you add all those together, we're slightly smaller than that as one state health plan. That's how huge this state health plan is. And our goal is to do it better and more efficiently on behalf of those that teach, protect, and otherwise serve. We have done that by offering zero premium for our Medicare Advantage product for over 65, no cost to the taxpayer, saving $1 billion over 5 years. We just renegotiated our pharmacy benefit plan, saving $800 million over 3 years. We have frozen family premiums and not messed around with deductibles for 5 straight years. We have frozen individual premiums at $25 a month for almost 5 years. But that's all we can do. We can't do anything else until we can actually take about 10 or 15% of the cost out of our $3 billion healthcare spend. And for most of our lives, Chad, we've heard this term, making ends meet. We're now at a point because of not the murderous invasion of Ukraine, not because of acts of COVID or acts of God, but because of healthcare billing, people cannot make ends meet, and they can't see themselves out of poverty.
Well said. And I would, add to that, you've done this at a time when, ever since the implementation of Obamacare for people who are interested in medicine and even for me and the work I do in the medical world, you're doing this at a time when medical costs that are very difficult to track have increased double digit. They've increased 2, 3, 4 times the rate of inflation, depending on the year. So you're here trying to contain cost, even while the headwinds are in an unaccountable way increasing faster than any other aspect of society. They're increasing faster than inflation every year. And there's no end in sight to this. And it as you said, we should be consumers of healthcare, not consumed by it.
Right. And, we have great partners in the Wilmington area. Wilmington Health's one of our clear pricing partners. Bethany Medical up in the Triad area, Trine Medical in the Charlotte area. I mean, we have great partners who have said thumbs up to clear pricing, thumbs down to secret contracts. And we continue to partner with as many people as we can. But, when the cartel controls everything, it's hard to do that. I want to tell your listeners this. I came to New Hanover County. I met with the CEO of New Hanover Regional. I showed him on paper that if he got rid of secret contracts, that New Hanover Regional would make $4 million more per year in profits. by getting rid of secret contracts. They would make more money. And the board was very intrigued. And then they spoke to the cartel and they said, no, thank you.
It is astounding, and it's going to take I don't know what it's going to take to break the back of those cartels right now. I think it's that they own the legislature. And regardless of whether Republicans or Democrats are in control, it seems like the cartels, and there's nobody advocating against them. There's just not the kind of power to advocate against the cartels. And so the cartels have become a government, like a dictatorial type entity within the halls of our legislature and with our seats of power in the executive branch. And nobody, at the executive level, it's going to take a governor that takes the stand, a Ron DeSantis type stand. The kind of stand you're taking as treasurer needs to be made manifest in a governor that will stand up to them. And until that happens, you will not break the back. And those hospitals will do everything in their power to stop someone like you from ever being a governor that will stand up against that, because that's what it's going to take, an executive with a bully pulpit with the courage to stand up against the cartels. And that just hasn't happened anytime in modern memory. Also, to sidebar that, what you said about Wilmington Health, absolutely, Wilmington Health is one of those that when you go in, you know what you're going to pay. They don't worry about all the paperwork. You pay what you pay. And it's actually surprisingly affordable. I mean, I was a patient of Wilmington Health. I was amazed by the lack of complexity compared to every other aspect dealing with Novant in that market, and even some others like Emerge Ortho. The paperwork and the way in which that went down is astounding. But Dale, a lot of people are speculating. Are you going to take this here in the last 30 seconds or so, take it to the next level and maybe go for higher office?
Well, right now I'm just trying to be the best state treasurer in North Carolina history and maintain my reputation of being the best treasurer that money can't buy, because at the end of the day, it's not rage, it's results that really matter to those that teach, protect, and otherwise serve. And all the citizens really want is to be spoken to like adults, and what they hear needs to make common sense. And that's what I've done as the keeper of the public purse and all during my public service career.
With clarity and conviction, that's your state treasurer, Dale Folwell. I say, Dale, you can check that box. It's time to look at another box to check, but you're doing a great job. Thank you so much. We got to take a break here on the Chat Adam Show. We'll be right back after this. Thank you, Dale.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Matt Bennett with WWAY News. The Wilmington Fire Department held its annual 9/11 memorial service yesterday. The ceremony was open to the public at the Wilmington Fallen Firefighters Memorial near MP Park. The event honored the 343 first responders who gave their lives helping others on 9/11, as well as those who have given their lives in service to the city of Wilmington. The ceremony featured Wilmington Fire Honor Guard and remarks from dignitaries. Wilmington Fire Chief Steve Mason says it's a tradition the city holds close to its heart. We're hearing from a Brunswick County man who worked as a New York firefighter when the towers collapsed. Brian Bonsignore was part of the GPS unit charged with marking the exact location of victims' remains. He volunteered for the job to bring closure to his dear friend's family, hoping he would find him among the ruins. He says the 6 months while on the job, he had tunnel vision until he'd get home. Then the images would cross his mind. Bonsignore says that's why he spends lots of time on the coast of North Carolina, to be near water, a place for refuge to help him heal. And the fastest growing city in Brunswick County celebrated its founding over the weekend. The town of Leland celebrated its incorporation on Saturday at the 33rd Annual Founders Day. Weather caused the event to be postponed earlier in the month, so organizers were excited to hold the celebration, rain or shine. There were food trucks, live music, and carnival rides. Wyatt Richardson, Town of Leland Community and Enrichment Manager, says they wanted this to be a time of fellowship. And after a 2-year hiatus, the North Carolina Honey Festival was all the buzz this weekend in downtown Whiteville. According to organizers, Whiteville is one of 10 cities in North Carolina to have Bee City status, meaning the city has been recognized for environmental and agricultural practices that don't harm the bee population. Attendees were welcomed to music, food, and of course, honey products. The mission is to highlight the importance of bees in the area and encourage bee-friendly practices. For more on these stories, you can head on over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Matt Bennett. Have a great day.
Happy Monday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. Get ready for a warm and very humid day here in the Cape Fear as our temperatures get into the upper 80s inland of the coast. Middle 80s will do it along the immediate coastline with a high risk for rip currents for those east-facing beaches. And as we head into the afternoon hours, we will have to watch out for a few scattered showers and isolated thunderstorms, some of which could pack a punch with some gusty winds. As for tonight, we remain warm and humid as our temperatures fall to the low to middle 70s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
Oh no, our roof is leaking and hurricane season is right around the corner. Don't let a leaky roof keep you up at night. Protect your home. Call Best Choice Roofing to schedule your free, yes, absolutely free roof inspection. Best Choice Roofing works with insurance or can repair the roof before the next storm, whether it's a full replacement or a repair. Choose the best. Call Best Choice Roofing at 910-228-5000 or go to bestchoiceroofing.com to book your appointment today.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move. So I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
This week on All Things Brunswick, Dr. Terry Stoops from the John Locke Foundation will join us to discuss the recently released test scores from the state regarding student achievement and also to discuss the Brunswick scores in relation to statewide. Join us 6 p.m. Tuesdays here on The Big Talker.
Say what now?
I'll tell you when we get on air, Paul. You'll appreciate this. Oh, well. So it was rather cryptic. If it was cryptic to Paul Valone, it's cryptic to everyone else who may have heard this. But our good friend Paul Valone is on with us. He, the champion of Second Amendment rights, and has his own show here on the Big Talker Network, and we appreciate that. And Paul, I wasn't trying to be cryptic. Where my particular studio is here along the marsh at the end of the Cape Fear River. So I look back over historic Southport near the Castle Beach Lighthouse. And right out here in the marsh, it's about halfway between high and low tide, so there's water infiltration. There's about a 12-point buck, probably 300 yards. It would be a heck of a shot, but I'm not a deer hunter, but he's about a 12-point buck walking through the marsh right now. And it's always fascinating for me to see these deer kind of wander through the marsh. It happens probably a couple times a week it's been a while, but this is a big one. He's beautiful. He's not in danger of getting shot anytime soon because of his proximity away from where you can discharge a firearm. But wow, what an amazing member of the species.
That's impressive. Very impressive.
Yes, he is. I need a telephoto. I could shoot him with that. So, welcome to the show. How the heck are you?
Very good, sir. How about yourself?
I am fantastic, as always. And it's a pleasure to have you on the show. And thank you for what you do and your show. Guns and politics, and nowhere is that going to become, as we get closer to an election, the political left, you're the devil. You're going to sprout horns. You're going to have a bifurcated tail. You're going to carry the pitchfork. You're going to be, covered. The only time the left ever mentions the Bible is when they can turn someone like you into a demonic presence that's going to, steal babies and advocate for, submachine guns to be in every house. So it's that time of year for you.
Let me put it this way. I tell people my goal is to be reviled in all the right places, okay?
Okay, as opposed to revered, right? So, what's happening now out there? Certainly the high-capacity magazines, that's the great threat to human existence, and the left wants to, Beto O'Rourke said he's going to take all sorts of weapons away from people, and he's thinking he's going to be the next governor of Texas, but it looks like on every front, the political left is losing its ever-loving mind on guns.
Without a doubt. I'm going to interject one thing first, though. In your last segment, you mentioned Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. Now, I'm going to get into your hands. I'll need your mailing address. I'm going to get into your hands a copy of the book I just wrote, Rules for Anti-Radicals, a Practical Handbook for Defeating Leftism, which basically is the culmination of the tactics I have learned over 28 years of running conservative political organizations. I want to know what you think of it. All right.
Okay. Love to.
Now,
my library is extensive. I'm still a collector of books.
Okay. Anyways, what we've got coming down the pipe right now, apparently, you may not be familiar, many people are not familiar with this, but the debate over AR-15 style pistols and the use of stabilizing braces. Now, these things were developed for our wounded warriors to better shoot AR-15 style pistols. And it's a brace that you can wrap around your arm to stabilize the pistol. Now, people quickly discovered that they could also put this to their shoulder and use it as a sort of shoulder stock, an improvised version of one. And the ATF pretty much went apoplectic. Actually, at first they said that they were legal. Then they decided that if you put it to your shoulder, you had redesigned the firearm and you had turned a pistol into a short-barreled rifle, which is a barrel less than 16 inches in length. And that's regulated under the 1934 National Firearms Act. And it's having an unregistered short-barreled rifle, or SBR, is a 10-year federal felony. So they decided at this point during the Obama administration that if you put this thing to your shoulder, you had redesigned the firearm and made it from a pistol into a short-barreled rifle. Kind of like saying if you choose to brush your teeth with a hairbrush, you have redesigned it to make it into a toothbrush. I guess that's about that logic. Under the Trump administration, they reversed yet again and said incidental use from the shoulder does not redesign the firearm, and it was legal. And so these things have blossomed because they are short, they're light, they have a variety of uses, and there are an estimated 4 million of these AR-type pistols with pistol stabilizing braces in the United States right now.
And by the way, for folks listening, AR does not mean assault rifle. That's the media on the left, and Eric Swalwell and these other people have tried to say that. It's just not true. But keep going. That's want to clarify that.
Yeah, that's Armalite rifle, actually, the first manufacturer of the AR-15 pattern rifle. Which, by the way, was back in the late 1950s. This is not exactly new stuff. Everybody thinks that these are some sort of new deadly weapon. No, it's been around for 60-plus years. Anyways, so the ATF last year put out a notice of proposed rulemaking saying that they were they were interested in regulating these, potentially assigning some kind of very complex point system to figure out if it qualified to be an AR-style pistol or if it qualified to be if it had to be registered as a short-barreled rifle. And we haven't heard anything from the ATF, now under Steve Dettelbach, the anti-gun ATF director appointed by our fine dementia-in-chief, Joe Biden. So we're waiting to see what the regulations come out to be, but something just broke. There was a budget request from the ATF mentioning the need to register up to 4 million AR-style pistols as short-barreled rifles and asking for money to budget doing that. So although the ATF has not officially said that this is their plan, it leaked out, and it's starting to look as though they will offer some sort of amnesty period, and they may require you to take a photograph of your gun to ensure that it qualifies as a short-barreled rifle. And they supposedly might waive the $200 tax stamp that applies each time you transfer one of these guns. But we expect something out in December, and we're probably going to have a few million accidental felons out here by the time all is said and done.
Now, if you sell, Paul, if you sell the gun, okay, because it is a pistol at heart. So if you sell the pistol separately from the shoulder strap, is it still considered a rifle?
Actually, if you were to disconnect, we'll have to see how the language comes out. But if you disconnect the pistol stabilizing brace from the AR-15 style pistol, then it would not be an SBR. However, the language, the way they had it in the notice of proposed rulemaking, would have required you to modify the pistol so that it would not accept a stabilizing brace.
But
so
if you
the
Paul,
devil
if you
will be in the
modify
details
it,
on that one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the kind of silliness. If you modify it so that it won't take that adaptation, then it can just simply take a different type of adaptation. And don't we get to the point? I mean, ultimately, the left wants to outlaw almost all guns. So isn't every step really this endless chase to try to outlaw all guns? Because eventually they'll throw up their hands and say, look, we've reached a point in society where these guns can be infinitely modified and we can't chase every modification. So let's just outlaw it rather than create a black market for every type of modification that can be created.
No, that's entirely plausible. What they do is they call it closing loopholes. Okay, the loophole they really want to close is your right to own a firearm. That's the loophole they intend to close.
They never want to say that, though.
Yeah. The interesting thing is that the advancement of 3D printers has basically made gun control impossible. And I don't know where that's going to go because people are manufacturing. I have seen videos of people manufacturing submachine guns, which are highly regulated under the 1934 National Firearms Act. So in any case, it's going to be real interesting to see what happens. Even now, these AR-15 type pistols are something that people need to be very careful of because, for example, if you take that pistol stabilizing brace, which oftentimes they have a Velcro strap on them to strap it around your arm, your forearm, and if you were to remove that Velcro strap, you have now redesigned the firearm and made an illegal short-barreled rifle. If you have a pistol stabilizing brace, which is more than 13.5 inches from the length of length of pull, it would be if it were a rifle, but this isn't a rifle. Basically, from the trigger to the end of the pistol stabilizing brace. If it's more than 13.5 inches, the ATF has tried to prosecute people for that, and unsuccessfully, fortunately. But the interesting thing is, nowhere is that 13.5 inch statistic published by the ATF anywhere. It's something that they work with manufacturers on, but the public doesn't even know this. So you have to be very, very careful when you have an AR-15 pistol. The advantage of them under North Carolina law is that because they are pistols, they can be carried legally under your concealed handgun permit. So if you had one in a backpack or something along those lines for self-protection, that would be perfectly legal. What happens when they change it to a short-barreled rifle? Probably that will become illegal. So there are all sorts of wrinkles to this thing.
Now, there is no doubt, when you look at I wish there was a methodical way to have a discussion about mass shootings. There isn't. I mean, it always migrates into a discussion about firearms and very little discussion about the individuals involved in the shootings. It's as if they get possessed by a metallic firearm, and that becomes the demonic possession of the firearm created the problem. But, in study after study, we notice there's a lot of psychotropic stuff that's going on with these individuals. There's a lot of mental health issues. They're using drugs. We've seen a revolution in the type of mind-altering substances that kids are using across the nation at a younger and younger age. I'm not pretending to have a solution here, but I know the discussion to solve a problem, you have to have a widespread discussion. You can't just say it, but it's easy. And I said this at the beginning of the program. It's easy for the left to say it's all about guns and don't deal with anything else. And then you have a mass stabbing in Canada where, 12 people get killed or so. And then you don't hear people out there saying we need to stop all knives. It's or Timothy McVeigh creates a bomb out of fertilizer and destroys a federal building. So how do you have a salient discussion about mass shootings?
Well, first off, you are exactly right. But what they're doing, what the left is doing, is they are exploiting these tragedies to pursue a preordained political agenda to end the private ownership of firearms, and by doing that, better exercise governmental control over people who tend to be a little too independent-minded for their liking. So that's clearly the intent. Now, how do you have a discussion with somebody like that? I I'm not sure because their motives are not honest. But I do know one thing. What we have advocated in the interim, if you will, is that deterrence is a well-established phenomenon, even for violent sociopaths. They don't want to get stopped by an armed citizen, so they tend to displace to places where people cannot legally be armed. I believe John Lott of the Crime Prevention Research Center says that since 1950, roughly 90% of the mass killings in the United States have occurred in ostensibly gun-free zones where people cannot legally arm themselves for protection. And so that's why we advocate for allowing citizens to carry firearms in an increasing number of places to provide a deterrent effect. And as a matter of fact, I have myself, with Representative Larry Pittman, we've introduced legislation to arm teachers, selected teachers under a program very similar to something I used to participate in before I retired as an airline pilot. And that was the Federal Flight Deck Officer Program, in which volunteer pilots undergo training and background checks and are allowed to carry firearms aboard aircraft to defend against terrorism. That exact same model should be used for schools, for example, and right off the bat. And so that's sort of what we bring to the table for this. And I do know, by the way, there's a Wake County School Board candidate who just made the News and Observer today. Let's see. Should teachers be allowed to have guns in class? Wake School Board candidate says yes. And this is about the Republican candidate for District 9 School Board in Wake County, Michelle Morrow. So folks who, want to have a conservative on the Wake County Board of Education ought to take a good look at Michelle Morrow. I think that one sounds like somebody who has potential and sounds like somebody our political action committee might support.
But it also, it overly simplifies the race for school board. I mean, if the entire race becomes about guns, it doesn't favor that candidate. That candidate, Michelle Morrow, has many more aspects of freedom about what parents should know, about what's going on in the curriculum. There's about many other issues. Public education right now is having a massive flight. People are leaving. Their kids don't feel their kids are safe. They don't feel that their parents are not included in raising their kids. And so, public education is in kind of a free fall. And and then the public safety aspect of it is very critical. You want to know your kid feels safe, and they don't feel like their kids are safe in schools.
Yeah, without a doubt. As a matter of fact, you're right. Michelle Morrow has also made comments that she feels that children are being indoctrinated in school, something I think a great number of parents would agree with. I know for a fact that I guess what is the Education First Alliance here in North Carolina is doing a lot of work on this, on keeping children from being indoctrinated.
Right.
So, this is as I said, this is something I actually point out in my book, Rules for Anti-Radicals. What we're seeing here is a multi-generational effort to take over our cultural institutions, our media, and our schools by the left. Started back in the 1930s by Antonio Gramsci and the Frankfurt School and its Institute for Social Research, a Marxist think tank in Germany that formed an alliance with Columbia University in 1937, bringing to the United States something they then called critical theory, and of course, which is now morphed into critical race theory. And they've spent, later the phrase was coined the long march through the institutions. And that's what they're doing, and that's what we're seeing in the schools right now.
What do you think's next? I mean, the rhetoric gets a lot more heated. The assertions get much more crazy. Where do you think this ends up in this election cycle? Because it's always a back and forth, and there's no middle ground on guns for the political left. It's about the eradication of guns, period.
Yeah, they formerly they had tried to camouflage their agenda. Basically, after getting their butts handed to them in 1994 and 2000, suddenly gun control organizations weren't about gun control anymore. They were about gun safety. And these were not gun bans, okay? We just want sensible gun laws. Well, Now, once again, they're, given that the left has become increasingly unhinged, they are now out of the closet on this, and they are talking about repealing the Second Amendment and, banning guns altogether, this, that, and the other thing. So all I can tell you is I often say that we are about one election away at any given time from losing the right to keep and bear arms. And the 2020 elections demonstrated how true that is. And I think if we as conservatives don't get our act together and get everybody we know to the polls on November 8th, okay, and if we lose this election, it's going to be bad news. I guarantee you that if they grab another seat in the Senate, okay, they will end the filibuster. Joe Manchin's opposition won't make any difference. They will pass a so-called assault weapon ban on common semi-automatic firearms. And the last one they, by the way, are considering is much more draconian than what they passed in 1994 that expired in 2004. So magazine bans, universal gun registration. Right now, the ATF is illegally registering guns. It's almost assured. We've got videos of ATF inspectors at gun dealers photographing all pages of the dealer's bound book of Form 4473s. The ATF is prohibited by law from registering guns under the McClure-Volkmer Act of 1986 and also the Brady Act of 1993, yet they are doing it. And in fact, they now have 920 million records, of which something like 870 million are already digitized. This in response to a FOIA request by several congressmen, including our own Ted Budd, that the ATF admitted they have all these records. Well, there's no place they can be getting these records unless they are illegally retaining the transaction records under the National Instant Background Check System. Okay, the computerized background check system that does the background check when you buy a gun from a dealer. They're supposed to expunge those records in 72 hours, but they are clearly retaining them to create this illegal gun registry. And so, again, if we lose this election and this trend continues, the right to bear arms to keep and bear arms will cease as we know it within the next couple of years.
That is the battle cry for the right. The battle cry for the left is they never are openly honest that we're going to take your gun. Beto O'Rourke said it. We're going to take, of course we're going to take your guns. And he's getting more animated about that every day. But I don't even know how many millions of firearms there are in this nation. Going back to where they're far, there's millions of them that aren't even registered to people. And it's not because they're illegally obtained. It's because they've been multi-generational firearms that go back to the 1800s that people own and have been passed down from generation to generation. Isn't it kind of foolish? Go ahead.
I'm going to object to the use of one word, registered. Okay. Guns are not registered in the United States. Now, you do fill out a Form 4473 if you buy it from a dealer, but the idea of the 1968 Gun Control Act was that 4473 stays in the dealer's inventory. He can destroy it after 20 years, and it never goes to the ATF unless they need to do a trace to research a crime, to solve a crime. Right. So they shouldn't be registered, but they are being. So anyways, go on. Continue what you were saying.
No, that was just my point is that, we have a lot of, I have firearms, you have firearms. I have some that, I learned how to shoot a 22 when I was about 7-8 years old on a farm. It was a single shot bolt action 22 from an Oxford orphanage that's one. It's one of many that I was, even though side-by-side hillbilly Stevens shotgun, which I don't even know how many millions of those from the 30s and 40s are out there. But it's kind of foolish, to think that these firearms are just waiting around to kill people. They're used in self-defense and as a deterrent. And then people don't want to discuss that, though.
Of course, no, they don't want to discuss it because it's not convenient to their political agenda. It sounds cliche, but I say it all the time. Gun control is not about guns; it's about control. No, It's about people who want you under the governmental thumb. All right, and they're doing everything they can to put you there. So it is, it is up to us as conservatives and as gun owners to make sure that this doesn't happen. And, that's what our political action committee is doing right now. We're actually grnc.org. They can go on there and buy raffle tickets for a very sweet AR-15, a Springfield St. Victor model. And all of the money raised for that raffle is being used for our political action committee to do independent expenditures to elect pro-gun candidates. So it's a very active program. We encourage people to stop on there, get some tickets, and help us throw some of these anti-gun bums out.
And Paul, tell folks a little bit more about your organization, your show, and how people can hear and find out more about you in your organization.
Well, yeah, Grassroots North Carolina is exactly what the name implies. It's a grassroots group of volunteers from all walks of life who share a common concern that our guaranteed freedoms are being eroded. And most of our projects, not all of them, but the vast majority are related to the right to keep and bear arms. It's an all-volunteer organization. Every dime goes toward defending your rights. They can find the website at grnc.org. We are the primary gun rights organization in the state. We help pass the original concealed handgun permit law, the concealed handgun reciprocity that makes North Carolina permit good in, I believe, 39 states now. We've passed Castle Doctrine, the Stand Your Ground, laws that are saving lives to this day, and a variety of other things. Meanwhile, we've killed scores of gun control bills. GRNC has been enormously successful over its 28 years of existence. And we definitely encourage people to join. Now, as far as the show goes, Guns, Politics, and Freedom was the offshoot of that project. Basically, the knowledge I've acquired over 28 years of directing gun rights organizations is what I draw on for the show, and also what I've drawn on the Rules for Anti-Radicals, a practical handbook for defeating leftism, because what I'm trying to do there is to give people the tactics to beat the left, not only in the political arena, but also in daily life. And so, because as you and I both know, the left tries to control you at every level. It could be a woke corporation that's your employer. It could be a school board trying to indoctrinate your children with critical race theory or gender ambiguity. It could be an HOA. It could be the Disney Corporation, trying to push legislation like it did in Florida, the supposed Don't Say Gay bill, and that was a lie because it didn't do that.
Paul, Paul, we're up against the top of the hour here. We got to run. But Paul Valone, thanks for being a part of the broadcast today. We will hear from Sloan tomorrow from Education First Alliance, so we'll talk to her. Thank you so much, Paul. Y'all have a great day. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We're done. Thank you all for joining us. Join us tomorrow.
You're tuned in to the Big Talker Network, Wilmington, North Carolina's premier internet station for news and talk radio programming. Find us online at bigtalker.live.
Are you nervous about joining a gym? Anxious about not being able to keep up with others in the fitness classes? Full Circle Fitness has your solution. We specialize in working with those just getting started on their fitness journey.